So the standard for this week is IOD 404, which remember we know is interpolate and extrapolate, right? So our first thing is we go to the figure or the table that it talks about. Okay, we highlight those variables that are mentioned in the question. From the question, we order the variables if they're not already in order. And then you make your prediction. Okay, so 11, based on figure 2, so I'm going to be heading towards figure 2. What is the expected DOP of a tungsten rod at 1,000 meters per second? So I'm going to go to figure 2. I'm going to find DOP, and then I'm going to find a tungsten rod. So this is the line that I am following here. Now 800, 900, 1,000. And then I need to find the DOP. So I traced it on the graph. So I found my value. And so it's going to be between 2 and 3. So we're going to cross off 4, cross off 4.8. And now let's go back to the graph. Let's see. Is that closer to 2 or closer to 3? Is right about in the middle. So my answer for 11 is going to be 2.6. And the next one, based on figure 2 again. So for step 1, I'll be going to figure 2. Then I'll be looking for launch velocity and going to a DOP of 0. So I'm going to go here. My DOP is 0 on this graph. And the launch velocity, do we have a y value and this is 0? No, we don't. So, based on figure 2, what would be the highest launch velocity that would produce a DOP of 0? So, for 12, we're going to look again, going back to this one. Now, let's see. So, the highest launch velocity. So this graph doesn't start at 0, right? So at 0, this graph is already about 800. So 0 might seem like the distractor answer because it's at the corner of the graph, right? But our graph doesn't start at 0 for launch velocity. It starts at 800 to 0. So the answer here, it can't be 800. It's got to be below 800. So, but we want the highest number below 800. So the highest launch velocity below this point, so the highest below 800 is going to be 682 from those answer choices. So I know that seems really confusing because you're taught that a graph is 0, 0. So you just have to read the axes. Okay. 13. So our last 3 questions are on a new passage. If the grass-fed herd switched to a feed consisting of half organic and half grass, its daily milk production in February would most likely be. So we're going to find February and milk production. So this is daily milk production, and this is February. So 1, 2, 3. These 3. Okay, now if it says if the grass-fed herd, which is this one, switched to half organic and half grass, we're going to expect it to be between these 2 values. So this one is at like 17, and this one is at about 24. So for 13, we're going to pick a number between 17 and 24. So 16 is too small, 26 and 31 are too big, so our answer to 13 is B. All right. Suppose the daily milk production of the site B herd were calculated from the middle of September to the middle of October. the daily milk production of the site B herd in that period would most likely be. So, let's see, we're going to go to a different figure. So we need daily milk production of site B and then the middle of September to the middle of October. So, let's see. Okay, site A versus site B. So we're looking at only this one. Now we're looking at September, October, right? So it's going to go from September 1st to October 1st in these ones. And we're looking at these two values. So the site B value for September and the site B value for October. Now if this goes October 1st to October, or September 1st to October 1st, and we want it in the middle, that means it's going to be in between these two values. So let's say that's 32 to 35. So yeah, figure 1 shows the milk production. So 14 would be 32 and 35. That's what we got on our graph. So A is crossed off because that's too low. D is too high. C is too high. B is right there, except they said 34 instead of 35, but we can attribute that to a small graph error. I'm reading the graph error. The graph is not wrong. We just made the wrong number, but we were close. Okay, now, graph, or question 5. A third herd was studied at site C, a location with climate intermediate between that of site A and B. From the data in figure 2, which of the following was the most likely July temperature at site C? So that means that we take site A, and this is our answer. This is site C and site B. And then we're going to go to July. So if I look in July, the temperatures are about 21 to 26. And site B is intermediate. So you will need to know that intermediate is in the middle. So what's in the middle of 21 to 26? 19 is too low, 26 is the end point, 28 is too high. So my answer to 15 is B. And that is all she wrote.